Bonjour and welcome to Paris. I'm on the Rue de l'Odéon in front of number 12, which in the 1920s was Sylvia Beach's great bookshop, Shakespeare and Company, which you can find all about. Noel Riley Fitch's great book, Sylvia Beach and the Lost Generation. But if you look up at the sign, it'll say here in 1922, in this very building, Sylvia Beach published Ulysses, James Joyce's book, which was outlawed in the United States for many, many years. And it was here that Ernest Hemingway was introduced to James Joyce. Only in Paris, every time you look up, you find some historical document. And we'll go up to meet our good friend John Baxter, who lives on the 5th floor. On the 4th floor, very often, Sylvia and Adrienne would make their signature dish of chicken, serve it to F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, who were generally drunk by the time they walked out the building and tumbled down the stairs. And I don't believe the carpet has been changed in all of those years. So let's go. I'm sitting on the deck of John Baxter's apartment in the Rue de l'Odéon in Paris. Over my shoulder, you can see the spires of Notre Dame. John is the true Renaissance man in Paris, and my oldest friend in Paris, not in terms of age, but in years of service, and who began his career in Australia in the bush as a cinephile, a big fan of science fiction, and over the years has written biographies of Woody Allen, Stanley Kubrick, Federico Fellini, Robert De Niro, and the list goes on, and most recently, a revised edition of a monograph he wrote over 30 years ago on Joseph von Sternberg and Marlene Dietrich. And now, perhaps the most beautiful of all his works, The Most Beautiful Walk in the World, describing the life of a flaneur in Paris, of which John is eminently qualified to discuss. So, John, the first thing that comes to my mind is first question I ask all of my subjects, interview subjects, not subjects in my reign.
Thank you for that concession. Yes.
When did you first come to Paris, and when did you come back to Paris to stay?
When I first came to Paris was almost when I first came to Europe, which would be 1970. So I was here just at the end of the Les Événements, as the French call it.
1968?
1968, yes. In those days, the Latin Quarter was cheap. You could live here for next to nothing. The cinemas were everywhere. They showed just the kind of movies I loved. It looked like paradise.
Well, in your latest book, The Most Beautiful Walk in the World, you talk in depth about kind of going out and meeting the world, the serendipity of, in a sense, defining your own Paris, which is available to all of us, no matter how much we bring to the table when we come, by looking up, looking down, looking around, crossing down an alley. Talk about that in the sense, was it something that was inherent, intuitive to you, or did it evolve as a result of being here?
Oh, it evolved. I learned. When I first came here, I didn't know nothing. I was hopeless. I couldn't shop. I couldn't speak a word of French. But when eating your dinner depends on you communicating with the man in the market, you learn fairly quickly. So I learned in that way. I learned by doing, and I noticed that the French just did things differently to the way they did in the other countries where I'd lived. The French, they dress up to go into the street, and they take care of where they go and what they do. There's none of this getting into the car and driving across town to the supermarket and the mall. No one drives.
In your jogging gear and rollers in your hair.
Exactly. No one would do that here. I mean, they put on a collar and tie. They put on a jacket. Women put on heels just to go to the supermarket. The most beautiful walk in the world. The point of it is to say, you don't want a guidebook. What you want is a guide to yourself. You want a guide to what you should be doing as you walk. And the best walk can sometimes be just standing still and listening to the music from the band that goes by in the street.
Viva Mexico!
Absolutely.
Venceremos! How would you say that Paris has changed you, both professionally and personally, over these 20-odd years?
I've found my subject. I've also found a perspective on life. I never had a child before, but Marie-Dominique and I have a daughter, and that was a great experience. I don't know that I would have done that anywhere but Paris. And then there's a quality, too, of repose, because Paris is a reposeful city.
I would be remiss, being the rare book collector that you are and the bibliophile, and not allowing my readers an opportunity to get a look at a first edition of The Great Gatsby. Can we walk into your library and show it to our readers?
By all means, certainly. I'm always happy to show off my treasures.
Oh, I see other beauties on the
Well,
shelf.
these are the books that I don't want to let out of my sight. I have.
You don't trust me?
Well, I wouldn't like to put it that way. It's just I don't want to tempt you too much. You see. I think probably the cream of my collection are these first editions of Scott Fitzgerald. There's Tender as the Night, there's The Last Tycoon, The Crack Up, but probably the gem is the first edition of The Great Gatsby.
May I?
Well, you should be wearing white gloves, of course. But this is the first edition in the wrapper with all of the little errors which were corrected in later editions. In a way, the cover is not the book and the film is not the book. The pages are not the book. It's the man that's in here that's the book. That's the lesson. What Scott Fitzgerald was like and what he put of himself into this. And to me, that's magic. It means more than so many other things that other people might value more greatly.
John, to our friends around the world who speak English, may we say thank you for joining us in Paris, and come and see us very soon.